Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. My name is Ajahn Sona, and today you are being joined out there with a live audience. We are in the midst of an extended retreat, 2 weeks actually, and we are full. And this is our initial opening from our long closure during the pandemic. And it is lovely to see people back at the monastery. We're having a retreat on the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment, and we thought we would combine our regular Sunday live stream with a live meditative audience. So we have questions both from our retreatants who are here, and we will accept some questions as well on the scroll bar. So let us begin with our first question. And Ajahn Sudanto is asking the questions, the moderator. So go ahead, Ajahn.
Ajahn, our first question is from Leslie from Vancouver, Washington. How much should we focus on cultivating joy versus allowing that to be a natural byproduct of practice? What are the best ways to do that?
Joy is a natural state of mind, and it occurs both in the human mind and even in the higher animal minds. And you can see it in the play of young animals, puppies, kittens, horses. All of these things exhibit what we would call joy. And of course, children do as well, if they're not badly treated. But if anybody, including animals and humans, are harassed, molested, badly treated, feel oppressed, then the joy goes out of the system. So part of this is that we ourselves, usually modeled on the experiences in life, we take on the role of this one who harasses and bothers ourselves. So these are what we call the 5 hindrances: greed and anger, agitation, sloth, depression, worry and doubt. These are the way we harass ourselves and deprive ourselves of the natural condition of joy in the mind. So the mind, if unharassed, becomes joyful. And that is how we cultivate joy. So the first thing we do is prevent and remove the negative, the hindrances. And this is, of course, the instructions in right effort. The first 2 of the right efforts are prevention, and the second is removal. And then we have an option. Often the mind will just naturally go to joy. It feels burdens have been lifted. The worries and fears have been lifted, and so then it returns to its natural state. But there's no problem in inducing joy as well. And we can also induce joy by memories and imagination. So we're good at this. I mean, fiction is all about, can induce joy. If the author wants you to experience joy, he depicts all kinds of acts of what? Kindness, generosity, loyalty, the warmer emotions of life. So if you recall those things, you can also induce joy in your mind, and it's quite okay to do it. The Buddha wasn't against any thinking processes. He was just you want to be careful in your thinking processes. And he himself divided thinking processes into 2, what he called heaps. One were types of thoughts which he regretted, which were not uplifting and profitable. And then another heap of thoughts which were not regretted, were profitable. And he said, I decided to select only from that heap which was profitable, uplifting, and I never regretted. And so he invested heavily in doing very deliberate thinking. He eventually decided that there's things that are even better than thinking, and that is silence of the mind, but that's quite a refined state. But even before that, we can experience joy, which is spontaneous because we're not being oppressed. And then secondly, there's no harm in inducing it. So we can do both. We can allow it to rise spontaneously. And you should ask yourself, if you're not enjoying yourself, then what are your emotions, and why are you indulging in those emotions if they're disallowing a sense of lightness and joy? And that is what we call meditation, bhavana, insight, awareness of the structures of the mind and the altering of the structures of the mind. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Our next question is from Heather from Portland, Oregon. Why are Westerners so caught up with intellectual knowing instead of deeper knowing?
Well, our entire educational system is geared to that. It's all about intellectual operations, and you get praise and marks and rewards for thinking and responding to questions. In fact, you get trained to answer virtually any question that's asked of you. And perhaps that's okay at school, but you're never exposed, and that's how you turn on the thinking switch. So school and education is a way of training you to think, and hopefully they train you to think critically as well. And critical thinking is not, finding fault in things. It's just critiquing information that you get in the world and trying to assess it with a balanced and wise mind. But what they don't show you at school is how to turn the switch off. So you're plagued with excessive discursive activity through the rest of your life. You can't stop thinking, and to always think, even good thoughts, is tiring. The other part that you can't teach in school, perhaps these days they are doing a few minutes of this, is silence itself. You can't have a university course where the professor comes in and you all sit there quietly. So this is why the entire society and educational structure is geared to that kind of discursive activity, which can't bring the sense of ease of heart that the meditation can, because meditation is really concerned with how you feel, only secondarily how you think. And so until you get into an educational system that encourages and allows you to experience this sense of silence without fear. In the educational system, or at least the one I was raised in, if you were sent off alone to be quiet, that was punishment. In penitentiaries, certainly in a Canadian penitentiary, the worst thing you can do to a prisoner is put them in solitary. So that why is it such a terrible thing to be in solitary? Because the people in prison are not known for their elegance of emotion, so they're locked in with their worst enemy. No escape. Their worst enemy is usually themselves. But why is it a special reward, actually, in monasteries to allow a monk who might be requesting to go off to solitary to spend time alone in their kutis? That's considered an unusual, not in a prison it's called cruel and unusual punishment to be left alone in a cell, and in a monastery it's called compassionate and unusual reward to be allowed to be alone. So why is the monk happy to be alone? Because he's with his best friend. So silence and the quiet and solitude can be your if your mind is well trained and your emotions are well trained, then it's a good experience, and you're with your best friend. So generally in this society, I mean, solitude or aloneness is considered quite a problem, but people need to be better friends to themselves and to enjoy solitude more and to be encouraged to. But that voice of encouragement of that and that it's not a bad thing to be alone needs to be a voice in society, and there needs to be training to that. Because humans can do it if they're shown how and trained to do it. So that is the answer to that question. Let's go on.
Our next question is from Shelley from White Salmon, Washington.
Longpur, following that, how are we to use these explained teachings to resolve loneliness, the need to belong, while cutting the strings of the world?
Yeah, that's a typical experience, actually, as one begins to develop spiritual practice, especially in the Buddhist spiritual practice. All kinds of religions, and some religions are almost purely communal. They don't have a meditative practice at all. You are just welcomed into a community, and of course, that's a very powerful experience. Humans by nature are social, and it requires training to become not antisocial, but to learn the joy of solitude. Most people fear solitude, and it's too bad because you're often forced to keep company with people that you don't share a lot of values and you would rather not be with, but it's better than being alone. So it's by training in the joy and ease of solitude that we get there. But that requires a Sangha. So this is, the Buddha himself was, of course, a spiritual genius, prodigy, and he figured it all out himself. And this is kind of what this distinguishing factor of a Buddha is, that they awaken without a teacher. But the Buddha says that there are two critical elements to awakening. One is a Kalyanamitta, which is a teacher who has spiritual integrity and has practiced themselves. And then the inner one is the capacity for wise attention to the inner life. So the Buddha regards an external friend, a spiritual friend, as extremely important to the process, leading to eventual completion of the self so that you are fully happy in your own company as well. And that's what the Sangha is. So that community of spiritual practitioners is an aid to that end. So we need that community in order to eventually find independence. And in monastic training, monks are required actually to stay within the community, and especially with a teacher, a qualified teacher, for the first 5 years of their ordained life. And of course, the Buddha encouraged lay people to come and spend time at a monastery at least every 2 weeks. So this is what's called the Uposatha. And the Uposatha is on the full moon and new moons. And you see in Buddhist Asian countries, people flock to the monasteries and spend up to a day and a night there. Quite often people can't get away for retreats. Now we're in a retreat right now. We just finished the 7th day of a retreat. And the people who are attending are fortunate enough to find time and resources to be able to get away for that time. And that's a wonderful thing. The Buddha didn't expect that everybody could manage to get away for such extended periods of time. Certainly in the time of the Buddha, a lot of rice farmers and things like that with 17 children. It's not like you can just waltz away for 10 days. But to get away at least every couple of weeks for a day and a night to meditate and listen to Dhamma, be very profitable. And that's the minimal training for lay people. And this could go on for much of your life. There you would find community as well, other people who would be interested in it, and they would probably be in the same village with you. So you start to develop friends and community, and also the encouragement in the monastery for the continuing development, almost continuous, and not just necessarily for this life. It's hard to get the idea in the West, but certainly in Asian Buddhist countries, they often use this phrase, in our long journey and in samsara. So it's a bigger than one life journey. It doesn't have to be. One could find enlightenment in this life, but we're in for the long term, and we're in to cultivate, and we will be there cultivating right to the end, and hopefully also we'll cultivate friendships that who will be with us right at the end as well. So this is how we overcome loneliness, not simply by associating with others, but which of course can help greatly, but also eventually becoming to dwell with enjoyment in solitude. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Heather from Portland.
Lungpor. After having a profound meditation experience, for example, your heart bursting wide open, how do you proceed gently without grasping for the experience again?
Well, that experience happens, and it happens in a fairly regular way, which is wonderful, actually, because that's what spiritual community is for, is to encourage a person, is that there is more to this. There is better experiences. And it's a safe container, a monastery, etc., is a safe container for encouragement of this kind of openness. The language of monasteries is all about profound loving kindness for all beings. And we do dramatic things at monasteries. One thing we do is bow. We touch our head to the floor. That's a whole body dramatic gesture, which is, especially in the West, where everybody's shaking hands, they're not bowing to anybody or anything. The idea that there's something worth bowing to in this life, that you have a high, something that makes all of life worth living and exalts existence, is what should be cultivated in the atmosphere of a monastery. And when that happens properly and you're encouraged, then you can have a heart-bursting, kind of heart-opening moment. And of course one would want to have it again. And the answer is not to just ignore it or dismiss it. Try to do it again. What the general advice for any exalted meditative experience is, don't worry too much about maintaining it. What you want to learn is how did you get there? So you concentrate on, like, how did that happen? What were the steps that led to that? I need a map so I can go back there anytime I want. Because I found a really nice park in the mountains, but people do blunder into this beautiful park in the mountains, and then they can't wait to get back there after this next 2 months at work, and they hit the road, but they can't find the dirt road that they went up. Uh-oh, can't find that beautiful little place in the mountains again. So what's important is not to just necessarily indulge in it, but it is to map out the way to that experience again. But by all means, you're encouraged to, you're not supposed to dismiss this or detach from this. You're actually supposed to learn how to attain it at will, and then to sustain it and deepen it. So this is two parts of the second two parts of the right effort is plant the seed, get the experience, the heart-opening experience, and then repeat, rinse, repeat, deepen, add fertilizer, etc. Cultivate, deepen, sustain until you can get it at will and maintain it deeply. Yeah. Okay, so let us go on.
The next question is from Anonymous in Portland, Oregon. I don't feel a heart connection to the historical Buddha. What specific suttas can help me know his kindness and compassion?
Yeah, I think that's quite common coming from the West. Like, maybe it's different now, but obviously we're not raised with Buddha images. And the Buddha image often seems very remote, very aloof, kind of detached from the suffering of humanity and so forth. So it's not, and you don't hear Buddhist chanting as a child or all this kind of stuff. But in a Buddhist country, so you hear Christmas carols, and so you get all this nostalgic welling up at Christmas, and there's Mary in the crib and the donkey and the this and the that, and in Asia, they don't know what that's about, especially the weird was a Japanese supermarket where they had this bloody crucifix of Christ hanging on the wall, they do it in the West. I don't know what it's about, but so we have Buddha images in the garden, like garden gnomes. Oh, the Buddha, he's another garden gnome, like this is like, we don't say, the Buddhists, we're very polite and tolerant, but you don't have, I don't know, a crucified Jesus holding up a grape plant or something like that, or say a statue of Muhammad in the garden. You buy it at Home Depot. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. But the Buddha, it's fair game. You can use the Buddha image as a paperweight, on the bookshelf to hold the books up, in the garden, against the cucumber plants, anything you want. So we haven't cultivated our relationship with the Buddha as this rich and beautiful personality. So some of the suttas which might help with that, his advice to a woman who had finally, after a number of miscarriages, had a child, but the child had died very early, and she just could not accept it. And he didn't just tell her, well, that's anicca, that's the way it goes. He is much more compassionate. He says, well, if you can find, go to a house in a village and find a handful of seeds from a house where death has never visited, then you can have your child back. So she went house to house to house looking for a little handful of mustard seed. And she'd ask at the house, has death ever visited? Well, my cousin died, my aunt died, I lost 3 children, on and on. She couldn't find a house. That's what's called gradual therapy. Instead of the blunt truth of this situation of life and death and vulnerability, it wasn't acceptable to her. But so it was really amazingly kind, and he realized she couldn't hear that. She'll have to go, and slowly and gradually it dawns on her that everybody's in this situation. Everybody has lost somebody. Nobody has gone through without losing somebody. And eventually she accepts that. So this is a tender and kindly relationship. In the Vinaya, the Buddha comes to a monastery. This is before certain rules were laid down, and a monk was extremely sick, and the other monks were not taking care of him. He was lying in his own excrement and not being tended to. So the Buddha and his attendant Ananda go in there, and they strip to the waist and get all washed up and wash that monk up and get him properly comfortable. And then he says to the monks, from now on, if a monk is sick, you should tend to him as if it was the Buddha. A sick monk is the Buddha, as if I was there and I was sick. So you see, the Buddha is actually bathing this sick monk with excrement all over him and so forth. He's very humane. So you need the stories, and that's how we develop our characters, is stories. You need more of these warm stories rather than the ultimate Nibbanic dispassion of the Buddha. He's got all kinds of very tender and therapeutic kind of teachings as well. So then you'll expand your sense of the humanity of the Buddha. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Shamina from Port Moody, British Columbia.
Ajahn, is what people call talent a fruit of 4 powers? What about intuition? And what do you think about manifesting what you want or need into your life?
Yes. So the 4 powers are part of this retreat, part of the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. And these 4 roads to power are actually ways to cultivate extraordinary capacities. And they are, there are factors which are actually, you can cultivate more or less superhuman capacities. This is kind of essential to spiritual practice. What is important in these 4 roads to psychic power? Psychic power is not just being able to levitate or something like this. Is the power of the mind. And so Buddhism is not much interested in miraculous events. It's more interested in understanding how certain extraordinary things take place, and they take place for reasons. And so we have to invest our extraordinary amounts of energy, effort, determination, and investigation, and of course mindfulness into our approach to life in order to get good results. And intuition, so you spoke about talent. In Buddhism, like you'll see in English, we have gifted people. When I sometimes talk to elementary school kids and high school kids, they invite me to talk about Buddhism, to get exposure to world religions, and I ask them some words in Buddhism. We don't have gifted people because where did the gift come from? Why is a person gifted? Who gives the gift? It's Christian. The gift is from God. So the very bright person, the talented person is gifted from God. But in Buddhism, we don't regard it as a gift from God. It's a parami. It's something which has been developed previously in a previous life, especially as for children who are prodigies, that have extraordinary capacities at very young ages, impossible to practices. So you're bringing in the fruits of the 4 bases of success. This practice has been done in previous lives, and one has come to a high development. And you see it as talent or giftedness, but it's actually, from a Buddhist point of view, it's just the results of skillful efforts. As far as the second part, the idea of visioning or envisioning? What's the word that was used?
Intuition?
No, the second part, the
manifesting.
Manifesting. You'll see some people attribute this idea of just visualizing in their mind what they want, and then bingo, it appears. And then they say to others, I just manifest. You got to just get your mind around it, visualize it strongly, and then it will manifest. And for some people it does, and then everybody else tries it and nothing. So what's going on there? What's really going on from a Buddhist point of view is that actually you have put in the causes, either in this life or in previous life, for the manifestation of that thing. But it's not just wishing. It's not just a mental exercise. Specific things have been done. The results of generosity is what you give comes back in magnified ways. You give good gifts, and then multiple comes back in large ways. Radiating loving kindness, kindness comes back. All kinds of things come back if the causes have been put in. But the causes are not just, I want stuff. I hope I get stuff. No, the causes are actually either systematic, skillful hard work, or strong positive emotions and acts of generosity and kindness in thought, word, and deed. And then all of these things do manifest, but it's not just by wanting it. So some people have put in these, and they get extraordinary things to keep manifesting for them in this life. And they're asked, and the person, because they don't understand their deeper past, they think that because I wished for it, it appeared. But actually, no, you have perhaps an intuition that that possibility is there, and so you focus on it, and bang, it appears. But the cause and effect is not clear. It's not just because you wanted it to manifest. It's because causes had been put in. So the person beside you can do the same time of manifesting, and nothing appears because they haven't put in those previous causes. So Buddhism clears up a lot of mysteries, actually, about how this stuff works. But of course, you have to accept the idea of karma, like cause and effect in the moral dimension, manifesting in the physical dimensions as well. And that requires an idea of previous lives, because it's not explicable from this just one life. And some things, some benefits are delayed, so they're going to occur in later lives as well. But if you don't if you don't have the whole package, you're just going to get little partial explanations, right? Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Sean from Vancouver, Washington.
Ajahn, if there was no Theravada Buddhism, what do you think would be the next best path to practice to have a chance at awakening? Bonus, Buddha Dhamma is gone from the world, but all current paths remain. What leads to the most wholesome unfolding, shy of awakening?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people, especially in the West, and of course in Asia as well, experiment with various attempts. Your first diagnosis, when you're feeling unsatisfied or your life is not complete, you start looking for things, and you usually start looking in naive places, like changing your diet. You think, it must be my diet. I'm not feeling not too well. And maybe it is, a little extra vitamins. But people get obsessed by, okay, I've got this book in the health food store, and it's just about cabbage. It's all about cabbage. And I'm doing the raw cabbage diet, and I'm telling you, I'm feeling so much better. You got to try the raw cabbage. No, I don't want to try the raw cabbage diet. It's nothing to do with the cabbage. It's to do with running marathons or swimming. Swimming, especially in salt water. That's the thing. And then you combine cabbage and saltwater swimming. Oh my God! People just don't understand. So this is the naive beginnings to spiritual. The seeking, and you try different paths, and then let's do some yoga, let's do some stretches, let's do some Sudoku or whatever it is. I don't even know how to say the word, but chess, that'll do it. Anyway, there's all kinds of attempts. I think one interesting one, and then there's cults and harmful practices that are exploitive and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Well, one is interesting is just nature mysticism and the value of simply going into nature and spending extended periods of time in nature without dragging in a bunch of books and distractions. And then you can a lot. You see in the Buddha in the suttas that the Buddha is encountering hermits every now and then, who have just gone off to try to find the path themselves, and he encounters, and some of them are close. There's one hermit he explains in a very simple way. It is, what is it? I forget his name. Who is it? I forget. Anyway, Bahia, the sutta. And all he has to say to Bahia is say, just in the sight, let there be the sight. In the sound, let there be the sound. In the taste, etc., let there be this. Just allow reality to be without any further extension, and Bahia attains enlightenment. Now, why? He'd been living as a hermit wearing bark clothing, and don't think it's the bark clothing that did it. And he got it right away. So this inclination actually to finding something in nature, like finding some solace in nature, some restoration, some peace in nature itself, is an intuition that's inclining this way. Now notice the Buddha himself, when the Bodhisattva, there was no Theravada. He was trying out swimming in salt water and eating cabbage. In fact, he was trying out like standing on one leg staring at the sun and baking in the heat and starving stuff, because the local health food store says it's good for you. And he really came close to dying in his little experiments, his little quest. Notice when he abandons those quirky, bad ideas and sits quietly in nature under the Bodhi tree by a river and starts to eat as well, and it takes up a moderate lifestyle and remembers the kindness of his childhood. So he's mixing the solitude of nature, non-self-abuse, and a recollection of the sweet experiences of his childhood. And breath meditation actually was an experience he had in childhood, of feeling a great sense of peace sweeping through him, and remembering that in a scene from being outside with his ants around him, his not those kind of ants, but his ants and caregivers around him. Aunts, I think they say aunts in the U.S. So this is a curative way that nature itself, but at the same time, extended periods in nature alone are challenging until we have some formal meditation. So it's some way a means, and you can see it all through history. You can see Thoreau and Emerson and all kinds of philosophers that celebrate the experience of nature. Some of the Catholic saints also talk about you will learn more from these stones and trees than you will from masters, etc. So it's an alternative method if Theravada Buddhism or Buddhism didn't exist. Okay, next question.
The next question is from Mark from Michigan in the live chat. Where does letting go of desire for existence or rebirth and the desire for non-existence fit into the 37 requisites?
Well, they're implicit rather than explicit. So this is bhava tanha, which is a thirst for existence, and vibhava tanha, thirst for non-existence. And there's a third thirst as well, which you didn't mention, that is kamma tanha, which is thirst for sensory experiences. And these are the thirsts that keep driving us. They keep us in the samsaric world of continuation. And it's dealt with by virtually all of the factors. So the Eightfold Path is a way of overcoming these thirsts. 7 Factors of Enlightenment is a way of overcoming these thirsts. The development of the 5 Faculties, 5 Powers is a way of doing it. 4 Foundations of Mindfulness is a way of doing it. The 4 Right Efforts is a way of doing it. And the 4 Roads to Power, 4 Roads to Success are our way of doing it. There's a lot that's actually left out explicitly out of the path. For instance, the 4 Brahma Viharas are not explicitly in the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. So loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Although equanimity does occur in the 37 Requisites, but loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy are not explicitly mentioned in the 37 Requisites. So these things, though, are subsumed at an angle, sort of thing, in the path. They develop. So, for instance, like loving kindness, this right intention. There are 3 right intentions. This is the second factor of the Eightfold Path, as intention of non-ill will, non-cruelty, and renunciation. So some would say, well, non-ill will is another way of saying goodwill or loving kindness. But loving kindness is not explicitly mentioned. It's formulated as non-ill will rather than as loving kindness. And some people would say, but he meant loving kindness. No, the Buddha is very careful and explicit. He would have said loving kindness is what is under right intention. Is because the intention it's the absence of ill will. There are a number of beautiful, positive mental states which are not metta, but are the absence of ill will. So there's a variety of mental states that have ill will is absent, cruelty is absent, and clinging and greed is absent. But renunciation and generosity, for instance, are not the same. Renunciation is like you just, instead of going out and giving away your stuff to your neighbors or to the poor or whatever, you just dump it in a river and walk away. So renunciation is like you just want to get rid of it. You don't care about it anymore. And generosity is directing the giving away to other beings. So both of them are positive spiritual traits. The Buddha is giving the bare necessities of what leads to enlightenment. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Ryan Hamilton from the live chat asks, greetings, Ajahn. What is meant by powers in the 37 requisites?
Yes, the 4 the roads to success. I think you're talking about the 5 faculties and the 5 powers. So faculties are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And the 5 powers are faith, energy, concentration, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And what's the difference between the faculties and powers? And the faculties are, you have some beginning to these things. You have it, but for some people, by the way, some of the faculties are absent. They're not present at all, and so they can't be developed. So if you're an extreme skeptic, the faculty of faith is completely absent, and you will be missing something in your progress because you can't go on pure skepticism. You will be spinning your wheels. What happens is you can't go anywhere because another question and a doubt can arise almost to infinity. So you can't afford to just go on having everything absolutely proved beyond a reasonable doubt before you make a move. So the faculties are the nascent, basic kind of attitudes, and then you develop them, and when they become powers when they are not, cannot be overcome. So your sense of faith has been confirmed enough that you don't lose it from time to time. Your sense of wisdom is developed and strong enough so that you don't fall into foolishness from time to time. Your concentration faculty is capable of attaining concentration, maintaining it at will. Mindfulness is there at will, and energy is there. It doesn't flag. It doesn't turn into agitation, and you don't lose it into sloth as well. So that's the nature of the faculties versus the powers. And the lists are identical, but that's the nature of the transformation. And I hope that's what you meant by powers. Yes, next question.
The next question is from Keith from Underwood, Washington. How does right view play into energy, and why is energy why is energy below right view?
Yeah, very good. You require right view in order to direct energy to the proper goal, because there are people who have enormous amounts of energy. They take up all kinds of endeavors, and it's very admirable. They use their intelligence and their energy and all kinds of development of skills, but not at the service of the highest value of life. So right view is the Buddha's definition of what we should be doing as a priority in life, and that is, the problem is suffering. This is the most important issue of existence, suffering. And the whole goal is that, first of all, to find out that you can actually overcome this suffering. Otherwise, there's no point in harnessing your energies to it if there's nothing you could do about it. It's like getting a medical diagnosis about an incurable illness. And this happens. You go to the doctor and they say, yeah, you got this, and there's no cure for it. So go off and do whatever you have to do. You got 8 months. But there's no point in trying to cure it. But on the other hand, if it's curable, then this is what has to be done. You have to take these medications 8 times a day, and you have to come show up here and there. And so it's life-threatening. You have to do this, and you've got to harness all your efforts to that. But if you get that diagnosis and then go off bowling or something and just don't take your medicines, like, you might become a very good bowler and put a lot of effort into it, but what a shame. So this is kind of what people are doing. Like, they're bowling their life away, so they're frittering their life away, and they're quite often excellent fritterers. Very energetic, effortful frittering, but it's not what you should be doing. So that's why all of this is subsumed under right view. You got to have right view as the leader of all things, and the Buddha often refers to it as the dawn. The red glow of dawn. The rising of right view is the beginning of light. Yeah. Okay, one more question, or a few more questions.
Susan from White Salmon asks, do dreams reflect your mind's suffering?
Yeah, people are curious about Buddhist attitude to dreams, and the Buddha does mention dreams in a few places. Basically, it's not a high center to Buddhism. It's not the royal road to the unconscious, as Freud said. A lot of dreams are just monkey mind nonsense. Occasionally, they're meaningful. What the Buddha talks about under what's called 11 benefits of loving kindness, the first 3 benefits. Now, this requires enormous amount of practice. Loving kindness, practice day in, day out, deeply, imaginatively, with as much help as you can get, sustained, all kinds of. The whole preliminary to that sutta is how much you have to practice. It's like you're going to become a concert pianist. Believe me, you got to practice a lot. And if you want to be perform at the highest level of loving kindness, you've got to practice a lot. And it's not just something you do 10 minutes a day, it's a lot. So if you can manage this, then there 11 benefits occur. And the first 3 are: one sleeps well, one wakes well, and one has no bad dreams. So this is the royal road to the unconscious, is actually through loving kindness, not through dreams. Not through the analysis of dreams, but actually negative dreams are a side effect of, hidden fears and anxieties and so forth. And why does loving kindness change that? It's because the essence of loving kindness is safety. So that's what a baby feels when it's with their mother. If the mother is not worried, anxious, fearful, and has that soft, kindly expression on the face, that when the baby is held by the mother, it's also very early able to see the expression on the face and feel the friendliness and safety and complete. It feels entirely safe, and those circuits are established very early in life. And this is the simile the Buddha gives: as a mother loves and protects her child, her only child. So this is you're cultivating this that kind of love. You're trying to cultivate it for all beings. But also, if you have not experienced the sense of safety around somebody who you can trust and who loves you, then you might not know what that feeling is. But that is how the nightmare, if you don't have this, life itself can be a waking nightmare and a sleeping nightmare. And you'll see people, all of their sleep is troubled by nightmares, and their whole waking consciousness is also full of paranoid fear. And that's the opposite. So, and then they act out in bizarre ways, with hostility and cruelty and confusion. And so the opposite is loving kindness, and gives you safety, and they act out in a kindly way, in a generous way, in an inclusive way. And so this is how we would address the idea of dreams. They're not important in themselves, but how do you create, even when you're asleep, a positive and safe condition through loving kindness, the development of loving kindness. So this is the approach to the dreams. The dreams themselves are not important. It's you infuse your whole mind and body with this loving kindness, and then there'll be a transformation of the contents of your dreams. Yeah. So let's have another question.
Emotions arise quickly and without notice. How to resolve them before they become a problem?
Well, the best way is to stop trouble before it starts. That is prevention, and that's the first of the right efforts. Is start the day. The very first at the beginning of the day is to just take a few minutes, and what I call surprise meditation. Take 5 minutes and ask yourself, why would I be surprised? I mean, what is it that surprises me now? I mean, once you're past about 14 years old, you've heard about murders and wars and death and terrible things. Why are you still surprised? What's just nothing? There's no surprises anymore. But you're walking around as if this is startling news. So a car accident. Oh my God! How did that happen? And well, that's what triggers these sense of distress and despair with the world and all this kind of stuff. But one should just say, wait a second. I know all this stuff, and why am I reacting as if this is something that shouldn't happen? This stuff happens, and it's built into the system somehow. It must happen, and my reaction to it, like reacting to the weather, is how can it rain? I mean, why should it rain today? Oh, not today. It's just irrational. So this is how we prevent. It takes a few minutes in the beginning of the day to say, look, there's no reason to have a fit about anything today. Let's just head this off at the pass, and let me just proceed through life and radiate, instead of react to it, just act towards it in a positive way. And may all the victims of terrible things, may they be well, may they know that I sympathize with them, but I don't have to react in horror and shock and surprise and anger and so forth. I need to act towards it with a beautiful emotion, not just apathy, but with positive good wishes. And that is how you catch the emotions before they arise. After they arise, it's all that much harder, but you still must try. You must be aware, oh, yeah, there I go again. Old man shouting at clouds. I'll stop that, Okay, so one more question. Do we have one more question? 5 minutes. Yes.
This question is from Leslie from Vancouver, Washington. How does one find the balance and right effort?
Yeah, well, the balance is between excessive energy, which is destructive, and sloth, which gets nothing done. So that is, if you are tuning a guitar, you tune it to A440, and then the strings should, if they're in tune, they should produce some nice music if you put your fingers on the right things. But if you crank it too high or too slack, then it won't produce music. So effort is also like that. There is a right tension, a right amount of effort, and that's what you need to learn. That's a lesson that taught, the Buddha actually taught to a monk who was named Sona. And I actually took the name Sona from that particular teaching about balancing effort, so not too extreme. So monks, some monks can get very extreme. They don't sleep for days, and they walking until their feet bleed, and sitting until their knees pop, and things like that. And you see that the Buddha himself, before he's the Buddha, he goes to extremes, starvation, etc., and then he finds the middle path. So the whole teaching of the Buddha is really about this middle way, the middle path, avoiding the extremes of extreme asceticism and extreme indulgence. So that is it for today on our Q&A, and we are very happy to have been joined by our live audience here in our retreat. And we will be doing this again next week as well, because we still have another week with a fresh batch of meditators for the 37 Requisites of Enlightenment. And they will join us as well for the Q&A next Sunday. So stay tuned for that.